if we fed all the data about Ankur into AI, what are the 3 words it would produce to describe you?
I don't know, maybe technologist, boring, you know.
You've not been boring. It's been great. Great conversation.
My family says that all I talk about is technology. So
There you go.
I don't know. I can't think of third. Maybe foodie. I
Oh,
like trying out some new restaurants.
I'm Kyle Holloway, your host here on Real Talk, and I'm here with my effervescent co-host, Dustin Rainey. And Dustin, I'm excited today because we get to have a really special guest from the Acxiom family. Today, we're going to be joined by Ankur Jain, Chief Cloud and Data Modernization Officer at Acxiom. Ankur, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kyle. Glad to be here, and nice to meet you, Dustin, as well.
Hey, Ankur, so to kind of kick off, why don't you give our listeners a sense of your background, kind of where you've been in the industry?
Sure. New to Axiom, Kyle, as you know, I'm in
Mm-hmm.
4 months in. But prior to Axiom, I was with Merkle in similar industry. Merkle is part of Dentsu family. Was there for about 8 years, leading the cloud practice and modernizing their data management solutions, marketing solutions on cloud. And then prior to Merkle, I had my own startup. We were in cloud big data analytics, one of the very first few partners that Google onboarded in their ecosystem.
Hmm.
So learned a lot about Google Cloud and cloud in general. And then prior to that, had a stint with Dell for almost around 8 years in Austin. My last engagement there, or my last assignment there, was to build data warehouse appliances in partnership with Microsoft. So that was another exciting, stint at Dell. And then prior to that, if you all remember AOL, I was there for about 5 years. Started as an intern, and then working in the data warehouse group, for AOL. So yeah, focus always has been data analytics, and for last 10, 12 years, I would say broaden that, horizon with cloud and big data as well. So yeah, that's my short little background.
Awesome. So, Ankur, let's start with a question from your LinkedIn profile.
Sure.
So it says that you like to propel disruption. We love the provocative on our show here. Why is that, and what is that, and what does it benefit bringing that kind of disruption, propelling disruption?
Yeah, by that, basically what I mean is, big data was a disruptive technology back then. I would say around 10, 12 years. Cloud, I would say, still is a little bit of disruptor, although I would say it's more of a standard now. But essentially, I see myself as a change agent, bringing in these disruptive technologies and kind of working alongside with organizations to see how we can benefit, from those innovative technologies. So that propel disruption is essentially, from that aspect, standing up teams, upskilling teams, getting them ready to kind of embrace that innovation, and then build solutions and help our clients, to kind of modernize their ecosystem. So that's basically, in short, my mission is.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the reality is, what a great industry to be in, because it seems like there's something to disrupt every single day. So much has been going on. And so we've talked already about cloud several times, and, cloud has kind of a broad definition set. So help us understand a little more when we're talking about cloud, like differentiation between hyperscalers like AWS or GCP and marketing clouds or some of the other platforms sitting on top of those hyperscalers like Databricks or Snowflake. Kind of differentiate what's
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are definitely a lot of concepts, when you talk about cloud. I would say infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. So if you look at CDP platforms, or if you look at marketing clouds, these are mostly pre-built software suites, which are available on public cloud platforms. So that's the top layer, I would say. Software as a service. Email is a perfect example. We just go there and use the service. We don't have to worry about how the email will be sent or what's the infrastructure behind it.
Mm.
Platform as a service underneath, I would say, is really where professionals like you and me probably work, in leveraging technologies like you mentioned, Snowflake or Databricks. These are essentially your platform as a service, which provide the whole ecosystem for you to do or to design or to develop, a certain workload. So, for example, a lot of our work is on the data side, bringing in marketing data from disparate sources. How do you organize that data? And that's really where you need platforms like Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, Redshift. There are many disruptive technologies out there, and they sit on that hyperscaled infrastructure,
Mm.
which is infrastructure as a service. Like you provision virtual machines, you do the networking, you bolt on the security, then you do your encryption, things like those. So that's basically the underneath layer, which is where AWS, Google, Microsoft, they're all playing. And on top of which, you kind of bolt on these cloud native platforms like Snowflake, Databricks, to help organize your data, to derive the insights, things like those. So that's, I would say, in short, in summary, at a very, very high level, a three-layered architecture, from
Hmm.
that perspective.
Awesome. So, Ankur, when you were talking about kind of propelling disruption earlier, you kind of mentioned people, bringing in the right people with the right skill sets because things are constantly changing, and, with the cloud, you just have to think that the type of employees, the type of like developers or, whether you have people, marketers getting hands on, rather than these deep level engineers, you have more people wanting or expecting applications rather than having to get in and like understand deep level code, C plus or whatever. What do you see? Where do you see the industry going from that perspective? With these kind of apps being built inside of these cloud, ecosystems. I mean, do you see a shift going from like deep technical need to, more like, hey, now you can hire people out of college and the apps are there. You can just start, doing your marketing. I mean, where do you see that from a resource perspective?
Yeah, no, I think through AI, I would bring in the AI definitely into the mix here. That AI is definitely making it a lot easier now. Operations or functions which were manual otherwise, up until now, are now being streamlined, are now being made more efficient using AI. But I think at the end of the day, you still need humans to build the AI, right? So you still need software engineers, you still need people with programming skills. Maybe their day-to-day functions are changing a little bit. They may not be working on building the applications that we consume. Maybe they are more needed in building the next gen, disruption. But from day to day, I think the talent that we have, the resources that we have, they are still very much needed, to build these data applications. If someone knows SQL, um, they definitely are very much in demand because data analytics, it's such a hot field. Someone knows cloud, we need those engineers to build much more cloud native and much more efficient applications on cloud through infrastructure as a code, through agile methodologies, through CI/CD pipelines. So all these skills, I would say, are still very much in demand. um, the landscape is shifting. Who knows what future may look like 10 years, 15 years from now? But software engineers, data engineers, machine learning engineers, ML engineers, they're all still very much in demand, so it's a hot field these days. Yes, absolutely, for sure.
That's great, and kind of dovetailing that into kind of a broader question around, current trends and challenges. Obviously, AI is everywhere from sense of talk track, right? Lots of people talking about it. We've talked about kind of that three-tiered architecture, that is becoming more and more prevalent through the infrastructure, the software, and the platform capabilities. So what are you seeing specifically, like for clients in the kind of marketing and advertising ecosystem? What are the key trends around those topics, as well as what are some of the challenges? Like, there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of optimism around things, especially around AI, but what are some challenges that go with that as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very, very broad question. I would say,
Mm-hmm.
there are aspects that I can talk a little bit about from the business side, at a macro level, like what's happening in the industry. And then there are aspects, from a technology perspective, which I think are in front of architects and engineers on a day-to-day basis as well. But if you look at the macro level, especially post-pandemic, I would say the cloud adoption saw an exponential surge in adoption, right? So everybody realized during those pandemic days that cloud is the way to go. They can't physically send people, in the office or in the data center to manage the hardware and infrastructure. So definitely cloud adoption saw, exponential rise, and organizations were going with their preferred providers such as Google or AWS or Microsoft, or even going multi-cloud, to kind of hedge the risks. So definitely cloud adoption is very high at a very macro level. And this cloud adoption is embraced, I would say, both by business as well as IT. IT definitely to modernize the whole ecosystem in terms of platforms, technologies, their data platforms, networking, security, everything. And then they soon realized, not only can they take their data centers to cloud, but all these big, large, massive data platforms, such as data warehouses, databases, they are prime candidates, for modernization as well. So cloud providers, like we talked about Snowflake, we talked about Databricks, these are like platforms which are providing the cutting edge technology, which are all cloud native. So soon, we saw a surge in data modernization as well, trying to reimagine how the data ecosystem should be laid out. New roles like chief data officers, chief analytic officers started to come into play. So at a macro level, these are definitely a lot of trends that we saw coming, in recent years. And marketing is also evolving. Like it's not left behind. We saw the surge of CDP, customer data platforms, still going on, right? And they bring a ton of value. They provide a fully baked ecosystem to centralize, to um, organize all your customer data in one central place and orchestrate it in different channels. So that's also, I would say, a byproduct of cloud, because cloud underneath is the platform on which all those capabilities are built on. So that's at the macro level. We're seeing, if I may call disruption, or I may call evolution, or I may call advancement. These are all happening at the business level as well as on the IT level in terms of organization. Now, from a technology standpoint, we just talked about AI. That definitely is, I would say, a big disruptor these days, because you can take that AI and use in many different functions, be it generating creatives on the fly, or be it generating code or creating your test plans, which are basically day-to-day functions for our technical folks. But then modern ways of sharing data, like how you can actually have a seamless transfer of data without any manual intervention. Like gone are those days where you take a file out from a database, extract it, ship it through SFTP, and then load it back into another database, right? So now you can have a zero copy data sharing capability across many different platforms. That's one example. Um, Composable architectures is something, that we are also seeing, that instead of making those redundant copies of data between a data warehouse and a CDP platform, CDPs are now intelligent enough to bring that compute closer to the data. So many different, to answer your question, many different trends that we are seeing in this space. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little technical here, but
No, that's great. No, I
since you
appreciate
asked
it.
the question, like it's a very broad spectrum
Yeah.
of trends which are happening.
And I guess down that vein of kind of data modernization, the advancements in, honestly, consumer privacy, and you kind of touched on it, with the ability for brands to store data and not have to move it is a big component of that.
Yes.
And I think one of the use cases, I mean, I know a lot of our listeners are always curious about, is around activation, syndication, like the publisher ecosystem. You know, a lot of times, like, they have to they have all this data and they want to do something with it. They still want to reach new customers. They want to grow their existing customer base. Can you talk a little bit about, how that's kind of starting to take form inside of this cloud infrastructure? How are we modernize? How's the infrastructure kind of starting to hold up the greater ad tech ecosystem?
Yes, yes, absolutely. No, it's a very relevant topic these days, Dustin, what you brought up. And I would say a concept called clean room definitely is picking up, like a hotcake these days, especially in this industry. And it's very, I would say, another example of disruption. Like a very disruptive concept of how you bring in data and share with not only internal parties but also with external parties. These external parties could be agencies, these external parties could be your co-marketing partners, these external parties could be publishing network, edtech platforms. But the key is, how do you share this data in a privacy safe manner, right? And that's really where I think these clean rooms come in, because instead of physically shipping data to one platform or to another platform from one to another, these clean rooms kind of act as an intermediate platform sitting in without physically copying data, and then you bring in products like real ID, to kind of use that as a currency to anonymize the data, and then share it, with those external parties in a privacy safe manner. So we're seeing a lot of disruption in that space, and definitely excited to be part of that journey alongside with Kyle. But yeah, no, that's another prime example of how you make sure that privacy is not compromised. You make sure that privacy is in place and yet be able to kind of open new opportunities for brands to share and activate that data.
So, like you've mentioned, there's been a lot of disruption, evolution over even the past 5 years, as a lot of these technologies kind of matured and kind of taken on a mainstream footprint. In your assessment, because you work with a lot with clients and at an industry level, where do you think we are kind of on a maturity scale in general? Like, most companies, how far do you think they are down this path? Do you think there's laggards that are too far behind, or is everyone kind of in equal footing of kind of where we are in the journey?
Yeah, no, I would say, again, nobody's a laggard. I think, like it's never too late to adopt cloud. Even if you are on cloud, I would say, once you start taking a look, given the pace of advancement that is happening in this industry, it's very important to keep up, because all these new different technologies that we just talked about, they are being rolled out almost on a daily basis. New innovation is happening. So I'll give you an example. So even if, let's say, someone is already on cloud, it could be lift and shift, meaning you take your application as it was designed on-prem in your own data center, and then you just replicate that in cloud, right? That's what is called as lift and shift. But organizations who did that and claimed that, yes, we are on cloud, soon realized it's not the best way. It's not the most cost effective way. It's not the most optimized way, which led to, them going back to the whiteboard and thinking, okay, how should we redesign this to reap the most benefits out of cloud? And that's really where this concept of refactoring comes in. So what I am seeing in the industry these days is that, um, optimization, like how do we optimize the cloud to its fullest benefit by embracing these serverless cloud native architectures. So whatever application that we lift it to cloud, how do we redesign it? How do we refactor it to reap the most benefit? So that's one initiative that I'm seeing in the industry. And organizations who have been successful are seeing the benefits in terms of cost, in terms of performance, in terms of all these concepts that we just talked about, like sharing data in a very cost efficient manner. Things like those are definitely happening. Plus, I think AI is another big force, attracting customers to kind of migrate their workloads to cloud, because all these large language models, you need very heavy compute, you need, a lot of these pipelines, which should be cloud native. All these LLMs are running on cloud. So you need
Mhm.
to bring your data closer to where, these AI capabilities are. So that's another attractor, I would say, for organizations to kind of bring their workloads to cloud. So it's never too late. Even if you are on cloud, take a second look to see, are you doing the right thing? So those are some of the discussions that I'm engaged with our clients as well.
Well, I love that because I've had two recent just situations that came up that kind of really brought some of this to the forefront. One is certainly on the small to medium business side. I was actually at just a hardware provider, literally like pipe and tube provider, because I was doing a project at the house, and I was slightly shocked to see that they're basically using what appeared to be probably an AS400 system with a green screen
Yeah.
to to operate their back office, yet highly efficient because it's been there forever, right? And I was just thinking like, wow, okay, here's a small business kind of enterprise that is highly optimized where they are, and I'm sure there'd be benefits of a move to like a cloud infrastructure and a modernization, but there's a economic factor associated with that of the effort to make that move, and from a human capital standpoint, retraining, legacy employees, and as well as building out the right kind of application to do that. So that was one interesting thing. Another piece was I was talking to more of a mid-sized kind of industry player, and they still have a mainframe functioning, and just a consideration that we can get caught up, on the kind of forefront of these things because we are challenging ourselves, especially a company like Acxiom. We're constantly, pushing the boundaries and ensuring that we're at the forefront of some of these major shifts in the industry. But much of the world is still operating in a more legacy model. And so, to your point about it's never too late, and that's because it's like the reality is not most, there's probably a large number of businesses that are still making that determination of when and how to even move to the cloud,
Yes.
especially if they've been in business for a while.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And on the flip side, I'll give you an example, Kyle. I mean, like just on Wednesday night, I was traveling back home, after meeting a client, and I was at the airport. I had a little bit time to catch up, maybe have a meal before I board
Hmm.
the flight. And it's amazing to see when you sit at these restaurants at the airport, and every table has this QR code, and
Mm.
that QR code is so intelligent that it knows where exactly you are, which table is it, and what meal did you order,
Hmm.
what beverage did you order alongside. You can keep the tab open, you can place the order, you can keep adding stuff to that tab, and then once you check out, the receipt just shows up magically on your phone, right? So I think there are examples on both sides,
Yeah,
right?
that's good.
But it is amazing, like how but let me just complete that example one more time, because the scale at which they have you
Mm.
know um, floated that business model is just amazing, that because now you can see that same model being replicated every single airport, every single restaurant within the airport kind of embracing that. So what these technologies provide, if you embrace that, is the scale that you can bring to your business as well. So yes, and absolutely, I think SMB is ripe. To your point, I think SMB is ripe. That's where I think we will see not only the enterprises but SMB also leaping to cloud. And those who will make that leap, I think, will be the businesses of future. Because the pace at which this technology is getting disrupted, the business models also are getting disrupted as well. So I would highly encourage those who have not taken a look at cloud, take a second look and see what it can do for your business, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a business model perspective.
Yeah, that's great, Ankur. And people talk about cloud in kind of two general categories. So people say public cloud and private cloud. So one, would you mind kind of breaking down for our listeners what those two things mean? And then, maybe on top of that, maybe offer up your opinion on, why should someone consider one or the other?
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, that's a very, very good question. Public cloud is essentially where you don't own any infrastructure. It's all leased. Like if you spin up a virtual machine, it's owned by one of those hyperscalers that we talked about. But essentially, you are just leasing it, on a temporary basis to basically run your workloads. So everything is available through internet, and that's basically, in very simplest terms, that's basically what public cloud is. It's open to public. It's a multi-tenant architecture, and you basically are just leasing those resources to get the job done, whether it's storage, whether it's virtual machine, whether it's networking, whatever. Private cloud, as the name suggests, it's private, right? It's not open to public. You are the only tenant in that environment, and then it can be hosted by you or it can be hosted by a third party. But essentially, you kind of draw the four walls around it and say that, look, it's dedicated to one particular tenant, which could be Acxiom, which could be any other organization, right? So that's basically what private cloud is. And there are successful businesses, who are running on private cloud. And I think I will introduce a new term called hybrid. Hybrid is an architecture, is a concept which is here to stay, because what hybrid means is you have some workloads which are running on public cloud, and you have some workloads which may be running on-prem or your private cloud. Because of maybe data gravity, because of maybe sensitivity, maybe because of compliance from a regulatory standpoint. So there are many aspects, why organizations may still be on private cloud or may still be on their own on-prem, but using the benefits of cloud wherever they can. So, so that hybrid architecture is mostly what I see, like where even for our applications or our solutions that we bring to market, clients still have some footprint on-prem through which they send us the data, and then we take it to cloud and then derive the insights for them and make it actionable. But yeah, no. So that's to answer your question. You have private cloud. Think of it mostly on-prem, and then public cloud, which is all available publicly. And then how do you bring the two together to kind of create the applications? That's the hybrid side.
Awesome. And I guess like when you start talking about the use cases, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, like the sensitivity of the data, kind of what you're doing with it, either from an analytic perspective, if there's PII, involved, whether
Yes.
have things that you can really know about someone and get down to Dustin Rainey versus maybe a pseudonymized version that, there needs to be more of a shared ecosystem. So would you say like, public cloud is where kind of the marketing ecosystem's going in general, while private cloud is kind of where you're kind of bringing things together, holding that secure data, and kind of doing the more data management activities?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, I think, especially like if you, just for an example's sake, if we talk about financial services industry, definitely there are regulatory compliances that one may have to think, in terms of either PCI compliances, or it could be FINRA. It could be many other, aspects that one can think of. And from that reason, you may have to secure that data. And whether you can still do it on public cloud, but most of the organizations that I have seen so far prefer private cloud or on-prem. But then, with technologies like clean rooms, with technologies like identity resolution, you can anonymize that data, you can desensitivize that data, and then take it to cloud for bigger, larger processing. So that's really where your marketing clouds, like Adobe's and Salesforce sit, which are native to cloud. And you need that capability for activation purposes. You need that capability for advanced analytical purposes. You need that for AI purposes. So all those capabilities are existing on cloud. So you just have to be, like, smart enough, I would say, to figure out, okay, in what shape or form we can take that data to cloud and reap the benefits of the technologies which are available. So it's again like a hybrid architecture, that you kind of work with. Yes.
Well, hey, great conversation. Really appreciate all of this. And we're kind of starting to approach the end of our time here. So let's go into a little bit of a lightning round, just
Sure.
some kind of faster fire of questions here and just get your take on things. So multi-cloud or cloud, portability, compatibility. Where do you see brands in terms of relying on either a single cloud provider or multi-cloud?
I think multi-cloud is the future, especially for large, mature organizations who are playing in multiple geographies, who are processing massive amounts of data, where SLAs are like of utmost importance in terms of delivering the experience to their end customers,
Mm.
where security is definitely of utmost importance as well. You will see some complex architectures in terms of multi-cloud evolving. So yeah, definitely, I think the containerization. We didn't talk about containers. These are like how you build your applications and move them from one cloud to another. So organizations are already doing it. So yes, absolutely. I think multi-cloud is one area where we will see a lot of advancement happening in near future.
And then you touched on CDPs.
Yes.
So, real quick, your view of the role of CDPs today and going into the future.
I think there we will see a lot of evolution on CDPs as well. I mean, CDP started as a replacement of marketing database. Speaking of marketing, but I think soon organizations realize that some of these CDPs are purpose built. Like not all use cases can be solved by one particular CDP platform. Although CDPs have come a long way, and I think they will continue to evolve as cloud technologies evolve, as your data strategies evolve, as your AI capabilities evolve, as marketing use cases will evolve. I think CDPs will continue to evolve as well. So yes, definitely there's a lot of evolution in that space as well.
Yeah, so there's disruption on many fronts. U.S. Treasury Department concerns.
Treasury Department concerns. I think, again, going back to financial services, right? Although I'm not a privacy expert, but I would say I was just quickly glancing through it when they announced it. I think the number one thing is the taxonomy. If you look at the first bullet, that they rolled out, is the taxonomy. Like just in these 30, 40 minutes of conversation, we rolled out so many different terms, CDP, clean room, this and that.
Mm.
So it gets very confusing, like in this space, because there's so much jargon. So how do you even align on certain concepts so that everybody kind of talks about the same aspect, right, in a same unified way? So that's one. Transparency, privacy, ethics. These are all very important topics especially in the financial services industry. So I think it's very relevant, and I think it's first step of many more to come. Especially in this space. So yeah, I mean, that would be my takeaway, which I think is all positive. Yes.
Awesome. And then, one last question, and we touched on this as well, but just I think it's super important on, modern data sharing. What do you leave our listeners with as far as, why you would put your data in the public cloud? Is that the main reason?
The value propositions are many. Like we just touched upon cloud, we touched upon performance, we touched upon scalability, we touched upon inbuilt high resiliency, high availability, disaster recovery. These are all like concepts which are inbuilt. If you're looking for a PCI compliant cloud environment, or if you're looking for a FedRAMP, federal, regulation compliant cloud platforms. So all these advancements are happening on cloud. So the benefits are many, I would say. So it's not just one, it's a multifaceted environment, which brings in many different benefits. So definitely there are a lot of value propositions why one should think in terms of cloud.
All right. Well, we also like to end just with a standard kind of wrap up question. So going back to AI, if we fed all the data about Ankur into AI, what are the 3 words it would produce to describe you? And I promise I won't actually do this offline to validate your answer here, but
I don't know, maybe technologist, boring,
yeah, you've not been boring. It's been great. Great conversation.
My family says that all I talk about is technology. So
There you go.
I don't know. I can't think of third. Maybe foodie. I like
Oh.
trying out some new restaurants. Austin is bubbling up, and Michelin just recently announced their ratings. In Texas, so there were like quite a few restaurants who earned that recognition. So me and my wife, we were just thinking, okay, maybe we should just try them out.
Yeah, there you go. A little Michelin tour of Austin.
Yes.
Yeah, we might have to make a little detour and go down to Austin now. I'm
Yeah,
also a
exactly.
foodie.
Might have to have a follow-up podcast with you reviewing the Austin food scene.
There you go. That would be awesome.
That sounds
And
great.
we'll see if they're modern and using cloud technology behind this. That's what
Yeah.
drove them there.
Yes.
If we get to order with a QR code.
There you go.
Yes, exactly. Well, Ankur, hey, thank you so much for taking the time.
Pleasure.
I know Kyle and I both got a lot out of this, and I know our listeners will too. We certainly want to have you back at some point in the near future, because I know things move quickly in this area, and people are always kind of wanting to know, where things are going.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk About Marketing, an Acxiom podcast. You can find all our podcasts at acxiom.com/real talk or on your favorite podcast platform.